I poured my heart into our marriage for 7 years. Every sacrifice, every compromise, every late night at the drafting table to build the life Eliza wanted. I believe that's what love meant, giving yourself away piece by piece until there was nothing left. Then I came home early from my business trip, eager to surprise her on our anniversary. I heard her laughter first, that intimate laugh she saved for moments of pure joy. But it wasn't me making her laugh. It was Victor's voice on the phone, my mentor, my guide through the cutthroat world of architecture. The man who had shaped my career while secretly reshaping my marriage. I found the hotel receipts. I saw the messages. 6 months they'd been together while I worked overtime on designs that Victor would later claim as his own inspiration. When confronted, Eliza didn't even deny it. "You're never really present, Jackson," she said, as if my dedication to providing for us justified her betrayal. We tried counseling, my idea not hers. 3 sessions before she packed her bags and moved in with him. I thought I'd died that day, but dying would have been easier than rebuilding myself from nothing. Now, 8 months later, she's back at my door, tears streaming down her face. Victor left her for his new protege. "I made a terrible mistake," she whispers, reaching for my hand. "We belong together." Looking at her, I feel something unexpected. Not pain, not anger, nothing. And that's when I realize I've finally become someone new, someone better. Before we start the video, buckle up, get ready and subscribe for a special surprise tomorrow. I stand at the drafting table in our loft apartment, shoulders hunched over blueprints, while the morning light spills through the industrial windows. The soft hum of my pencil against paper feels more natural than conversation these days. Eliza moves through the kitchen behind me, the familiar cadence of her morning routine, coffee machine, toast, shower, providing the soundtrack to another day where we orbit each other without truly connecting. "I made you coffee," she says, setting down a steaming mug next to my elbow. "Thanks," I respond without looking up, missing the flicker of disappointment that crosses her face. I'm finalizing the affordable housing concept that could change everything for my career for us. The design incorporates sustainable materials with innovative space optimization, something our city desperately needs. If I can just get the partners to recognize its potential. Eliza lingers a moment longer than necessary. "Will you be home for dinner tonight?" I should be. Meeting with Victor at 4, but it shouldn't run late. I finally look up, offering what I hope is a reassuring smile. Her eyes, blue as blueprint paper, hold mine briefly before glancing away. "Right. Well, I might go out with Cassie after my gallery closes. Don't wait up if you're working late again." There's an edge to her words that I should address, but the detailed cross-section of the rooftop garden area calls me back. By the time I look up again, she's gone, the apartment door closing with a soft click that somehow sounds final. At the firm, I move through my day with mechanical precision. Meetings, client calls, revisions. I'm respected enough, but rarely the voice that carries. My ideas are solid, dependable like me, but rarely flashy enough to excite the senior partners, which is why my meeting with Victor is so crucial. Victor Reynolds isn't just my mentor. He's architectural royalty in the city. His recommendation opened doors for me after graduate school, and his guidance has shaped my career for the past decade. At 58, he's still charming enough to captivate clients and bold enough to push conventional boundaries. I admire him. Everyone does. "Jackson, my boy," Victor greets me with his customary enthusiasm when I entered his corner office, the view of the city skyline, which he helped shape, sprawling behind him. "Show me what you've been laboring over so secretly." I unfurl my designs on his massive desk, explaining the concept with carefully measured passion. I've learned not to appear too eager. Victor nods, asks incisive questions, traces his finger along key structural elements. "It's good, Jackson. Very good. The sustainability metrics alone will interest the Jackson Foundation." He straightens, adjusting his designer glasses. "Let me present it at the partner meeting tomorrow." They respond better to the AA no. I feel a familiar twist of disappointment beneath my gratitude. Once again, my work will be filtered through someone else's voice. But I nod agreement because that's what I do. I accommodate. I compromise. I survive by bending. I appreciate that, Victor. Don't mention it. What are mentors for? His smile is genuine, his hand warm on my shoulder. "Now get out of here. Isn't your anniversary this weekend? Go home to that beautiful wife of yours." My anniversary? 3 days away. I've been so absorbed in work that I nearly forgot. As I pack up my materials and idea forms a surprise trip. Eliza has been wanting to visit the coast. Perhaps that's what we need to reconnect. I booked the weekend getaway during my commute home. imagining her delight when I tell her over dinner. But when I arrive at our apartment, it's dark and empty. Her text reminds me she's out with Cassie. I heat leftover pasta and eat alone at our kitchen island, surrounded by the carefully curated home we built together. Everything in its right place except perhaps us. The next day brings unexpected travel, an emergency site visit for another project. I'll need to miss the partner meeting where Victor will present my affordable housing concept. As I rush to catch my flight, I text Elise about the surprise weekend plans. Her response is enthusiastic, with more exclamation points than she's used with me in months. For 2 days, I troubleshoot construction issues in Chicago, working 18-hour days to resolve them quickly so I can return for our anniversary. When the problems are finally solved a day early, I decide to surprise Elisa by coming home tonight instead of tomorrow. I don't call ahead, imagining her face when I walk through the door. The Uber drops me at our building just after 9. I'm exhausted but buoyed by anticipation. Our apartment windows glow with warm light, telling me Elisa is home. I take the elevator up, overnight bag in hand, rehearsing my greeting. When I unlock our door, the apartment is quiet except for Elisa's voice coming from our bedroom. She's laughing, that genuine, uninhibited laugh I haven't heard directed at me in too long. I assume she's on the phone with Cassie until I hear the rumble of a male voice responding. I stand frozen in our entryway, bag still in hand, as the conversation continues. I should announce myself, but something primitive holds me back. The male voice is familiar in a way that makes my stomach clench. He'll be gone until tomorrow night, Elisa says, her voice dropping to that intimate register that used to be reserved for me. We have time. I move silently toward the bedroom, still hoping for an innocent explanation. The door is partially open, allowing me to see Elisa sitting cross-legged on our bed, phone to her ear, wearing only my old Cornell t-shirt. I know, Victor. I miss you too. Last night was amazing. The world tilts beneath my feet. Victor, my mentor. The man who will present my design tomorrow. The man my wife apparently spent last night with. I must make some sound because Elisa's head snaps up, her eyes widening in shock. I have to go, she says quickly into the phone before ending the call. Jackson, you're home early. I stand there, unable to form words as understanding crystallizes. The late meetings, the weekends at the office, the mentorship that seemed so generous. How long? I finally ask, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Elisa doesn't pretend not to understand. She places her phone down carefully, like it might detonate. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of lies while I poured my soul into designs that Victor would present as his prodigious work. Half a year of believing my marriage was merely strained by normal pressures. The next week passes in a blur of confrontations and confessions. I learn that Victor has been pursuing Elisa since meeting her at the firm's holiday party. I discover hotel receipts in her email, messages that make me physically ill. When confronted, Victor offers resignation from the firm as penance, a hollow gesture since he's already accepted a prestigious university position. My design for affordable housing receives accolades at the partner meeting, with Victor generously acknowledging my contribution. The irony isn't lost on me. Professional recognition arrives precisely when my personal life implodes. I suggest marriage counseling, clinging to the belief that commitment means working through even this. Elisa agrees with surprising readiness, but 3 sessions reveal the depth of our disconnect. I've been emotionally unavailable, she claims. Work always came first. Victor made her feel seen, valued. Each justification cuts deeper than the last. I think we need space to figure things out, Elisa finally says after our 3rd therapy session. The words sound rehearsed. 2 days later, I return from work to find half our closet empty and a note on the kitchen island. She's moved in with Victor. She's sorry for hurting me. She hopes I find happiness. I sink to the floor of our carefully designed kitchen, back against the cabinets I chose for their clean lines and durability. Everything I've built my life around, my marriage, my mentor, my sense of professional integrity, has collapsed. I'm an architect of a facade, nothing more. I lease the first apartment I tour, a minimalist 1-bedroom downtown, all glass and steel and emptiness. The furniture consists of a mattress on the floor, a drafting table, and a single chair. The realtor seems concerned by my apathy toward the lack of amenities, but I'd sign the papers without negotiation. The stark space matches the hollowness inside me. Each night I lie awake staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations, searching for signs I'd missed. Sleep arrives in brief, unsatisfying increments, usually just before dawn. I set my alarm for 5:30 a.m., though I'm almost always already awake when it sounds. By 6, I'm at the office, fluorescent lights humming overhead as I lose myself in work that requires no emotional engagement. "You're here early again," says Maya Chen, the firm's talented structural engineer, when she finds me reviewing blueprints one morning at 6:45. "Did you even leave last night?" I manage a non-committal sound without looking up from the calculations I'm double-checking. Maya has always been friendly, but I can't handle friendliness now. Kindness might break me when coldness hasn't. "The Anderson project deadline isn't for 3 weeks," she continues, undeterred by my silence. "You know that, right?" "I know." My pencil keeps moving, making annotations that probably aren't necessary. Maya lingers, coffee cup in hand. "Everyone's worried about you, Jackson. This makes me look up. Everyone has their own problems." My voice sounds rusty from disuse. "True, but isolating yourself isn't the solution to yours." She places a business card beside my blueprint. "My therapist. She helped me after my divorce." I want to reject the card to tell Maya that therapy couldn't fix what had been broken in my marriage. But I merely nod, returning to my work. When she leaves, I slip the card into my pocket, telling myself it's just to avoid being rude. 2 weeks later, the annual promotions are announced. Despite my increased productivity and consistently positive client feedback, I'm passed over. The associate partner position goes to Daniel Torres, a charismatic young architect who joined the firm 6 months ago, as Victor's latest protege. I learned this in an email, sitting alone in my office after hours. The message from the managing partner includes platitudes about my valuable contributions and future opportunities. What it doesn't mention is that Daniel's promotion came with Victor's enthusiastic recommendation before he departed for his university position. That night, sitting in my empty apartment with a glass of whiskey I don't really want, I finally called the number on Maya's therapist card. Dr. Winslow's office is deliberately calming, soft colors, comfortable furniture, gentle lighting. I sit stiffly on her couch, answering her questions with minimal detail. "Yes, my wife left me for my mentor." "No, I didn't see it coming." "Yes, I'm functioning fine." Define functioning fine for me, Dr. Winslow says, her expression neutral but attentive. "I'm meeting all my deadlines. My work quality hasn't suffered." "And outside of work?" I stare at my hands. "Work is what matters." Dr. Winslow lets the silence stretch until I feel compelled to fill it. "My parents immigrated here with nothing. They worked 16-hour days to give me opportunities. Complaining about personal problems seems self-indulgent." "Is that what you're doing here? Complaining? Isn't that what therapy is?" She smiles slightly. "Therapy is many things to many people. For some, it's learning to recognize patterns that no longer serve them. For others, it's permission to prioritize their own needs alongside others." She leans forward. "Tell me about your relationship with your parents." Our sessions continue weekly. Dr. Winslow doesn't offer easy solutions or hollow reassurances. Instead, she asks questions that linger with me for days. Why do I equate self-sacrifice with love? When did I learn that my worth depends on what I provide to others? What would it look like to build a life where my needs matter too? One Thursday evening, I'm working late as usual when Maya appears in my doorway. "We're going out," she announces without preamble. The team is celebrating Priya's birthday at Vesper Lounge. I've got to finish these revisions. I gesture at my computer screen. Maya crosses her arms. "The revisions can wait until tomorrow. You haven't joined a single team event in 3 months. I'm not good company right now. I'm not asking you to entertain us. Just be present. 1 hour. Then you can retreat back to your cave." Something in her steady gaze makes it impossible to refuse. I find myself in a crowded lounge an hour later, nursing a club soda while colleagues laugh and share stories around me. The noise and proximity to so many people makes my skin prickle with discomfort. "You don't have to look like you're facing a firing squad," Maya says, sliding into the seat beside me. "No one expects you to be the life of the party." "Why did you make me come?" She studies me for a moment. "Because hiding from life doesn't heal you. It just postpones the inevitable." "Which is?" "Learning who you are beyond what happened to you." Her words follow me home that night, echoing in my mind as I lie awake. Who am I beyond what happened to me? Beyond the betrayal, beyond the abandonment, beyond the professional disappointment. The next day, I see a notice on the community board about a volunteer program helping rebuild homes damaged in last year's floods. On impulse, I sign up for a Saturday shift. The work is physical and precise, measuring, cutting, hammering. By day's end, my body aches and my hands are blistered, but something has shifted inside me. The simple satisfaction of building something tangible, something that will shelter and protect, reminds me why I became an architect in the first place. I returned the following weekend and the one after that. The volunteer coordinator, an older man named Ray, notices my expertise and soon has me designing accessible modifications for homeowners with disabilities. For the first time in months, my skills are being used to directly improve someone's life, not just to advance corporate interests or build my own career. "You got a gift?" Ray tells me after I create a wheelchair-accessible kitchen design that maximizes the limited space in a ranch-style home. Most architects forget there are real people living in their creations. His words resonate with what Dr. Winslow has been suggesting, that I've been designing my life the way I thought others wanted it, not how I needed it to be. This realization leads me to the most difficult conversation of my life. I fly home for my father's 60th birthday, a brief weekend trip I considered canceling multiple times. My parents' modest suburban home remains unchanged since my childhood. Practical furnishings, family photos, evidence of lives built on sacrifice and duty. After the small family gathering, I find myself alone with them in the living room. My mother pours tea while my father asks polite questions about work. Neither mentions Eliza. Her absence hangs between us, an acknowledged ghost. "I'm seeing a therapist," I say abruptly, interrupting my father's inquiry about property values in my neighborhood. My mother's hand stills on the teapot. My father's expression tightens slightly. "Is that necessary?" he asks. "These things happen in life. You pick yourself up and move forward." That's what I'm trying to do. But I'm also trying to understand why I stayed in a relationship that wasn't working long before the affair. My mother sets down the teapot carefully. "Marriage requires sacrifice, Jackson. Your father and I have made many for each other." "We are happy, though. Truly happy." The question hangs in the air, so improper it almost feels violent. My parents exchange glances, a silent communication honed over decades. "Happiness is not constant," my father finally says. "It comes and goes. Commitment remains. Even when the commitment is destroying you." My mother looks pained. "We taught you to endure, to be responsible. These are not bad lessons." "No, they're not," I agree. "But I think I learned something else too, that my needs don't matter as much as everyone else's. That love means erasing yourself." The conversation continues late into the night, painful and necessary. We don't reach a resolution, but something shifts in our understanding of each other. I see my parents not just as the architects of my worldview, but as people who did their best with the blueprints they inherited. Back at work, I begin setting small boundaries. I decline a request to take on an additional project when my plate is already full. In a departmental meeting, I speak up when the design director suggests modifications that would compromise the structural integrity of a building. When Daniel presents an idea remarkably similar to one I proposed months ago, I calmly point out the origin of the concept. These small assertions feel foreign, almost dangerous, but each time I survive one, the next becomes slightly easier. I'm rebuilding my professional identity brick by brick, this time with a foundation that can sustain the weight of my own voice. My design for the Robertson Community Center receives feature placement in Architectural Digest, accompanied by an interview where I discuss the importance of creating spaces that serve real human needs. The morning the article publishes, my email fills with congratulatory messages from colleagues and former classmates. Even my parents send a brief note expressing pride. 6 months ago, this recognition would have validated my entire existence. Now it registers as meaningful but not defining. At the office, there's a subtle shift in how people interact with me. The senior partners stop by my desk to discuss the article, making casual mentions of upcoming projects that might interest me. Colleagues seek my input on their designs more frequently. I've started decorating my office too, not with the expected architectural awards or certificates, but with photos from the community rebuild project and a hand-carved wooden bowl gifted to me by a homeowner whose kitchen I redesigned. "You're becoming a person," Maya teases when she notices the personal touches. "Next thing, you'll be taking lunch breaks like a normal human." We've fallen into an easy friendship over the past months, sharing coffee in the mornings and occasionally grabbing dinner when working late. Maya's directness balances my tendency toward introspection. She challenges me when I retreat into old patterns, but respects the boundaries I'm learning to establish. "I was thinking," she says, leaning against my doorframe one Friday afternoon, "there's an exhibition at the Hirschhorn tomorrow. The Japanese architect you mentioned. Want to check it out?" Something in her tone suggests this might be more than a casual invitation between colleagues. I feel a flutter of panic, followed by an unexpected warmth. "I like that," I hear myself saying. The exhibition proves fascinating. Tanaka's use of light and negative space resonates with my evolving aesthetic. Afterward, Maya and I linger over ramen at a tiny restaurant nearby, discussing the intersection of function and beauty in everyday spaces. Our conversation flows effortlessly from architecture to books to childhood memories. When her hand brushes mine reaching for the check, neither of us pulls away immediately. "This was nice," she says as we stand outside the restaurant, the evening air cool against my face. "It was." I hesitate, uncertain how to navigate this territory. I should probably mention that I'm still figuring things out. After everything with Eliza. I know. Maya interrupts gently. "I'm not asking for declarations, Jackson. Just openness to possibilities." She kisses me briefly on the cheek before hailing a cab, leaving me with the lingering scent of her perfume and a confusion of emotions I haven't felt in years. The following week brings complications from unexpected quarters. First, Tadano Mills, the design director and my immediate supervisor, rejects my proposal for the Lincoln Heights project, claiming it's too unconventional for our conservative client. When I present market research supporting modern aesthetic preferences among similar demographics, he dismisses it without consideration. "We need to focus on proven approaches," he says, sliding my proposal aside. "The client is looking for security, not innovation." "They came to us because of our reputation for thoughtful design," I counter, refusing to let my work be dismissed so easily. If they wanted cookie cutter, they could hire any firm in the city. Daniel's expression tightens. "This isn't your community center project, Jackson. This is a multi-million-dollar development. We can't afford to experiment." "It's not experimentation, it's evolution." I retrieve my proposal from his desk. "I'd like to present both approaches at next week's client meeting. Let them decide what represents security to them." I exit before he can refuse, aware I've just challenged the office hierarchy in a way the old Jackson never would have. The confrontation leaves me simultaneously anxious and exhilarated. The second complication arrives via text from a former colleague still connected to Victor's university department. Apparently, Victor and Eliza's relationship has been deteriorating publicly. They've been overheard arguing on campus, and recently Eliza didn't attend a faculty dinner where partners were expected. The gossip suggests Victor has been spending time with a doctoral candidate in his department. I stare at the message, unsure how to feel. There's no satisfaction in knowing their relationship might be failing, just a dull ache for time wasted and trust misplaced. I delete the text without responding. The third and most significant complication occurs 3 days later. I'm working late, finalizing details for the client presentation I insisted on conducting personally. A light knock on my office door pulls my attention from the computer screen. When I look up, Elisa stands in the doorway, looking both familiar and strange. "Hi," she says softly. She's thinner than I remember, her blue eyes shadowed with fatigue. She wears a simple black dress I don't recognize, her blonde hair cut shorter than she's worn it since college. "What are you doing here?" My voice sounds calmer than I feel. "I tried your apartment first. The new tenant gave me your work address." She hesitates. "Can I come in?" I gesture to the chair across from my desk, closing my laptop to give her my full attention. Part of me wants to refuse this conversation, to protect the fragile new self I've been constructing. But curiosity overrides caution. "How are you?" she asks, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. "I'm managing. What do you need, Elisa?" Her directness seems to throw her. "I wanted to see you. To talk. About? Victor and I are over." She says it quickly, like ripping off a bandage. "He's been seeing someone else for months. A student, if you can believe the irony." I absorb this information with surprising detachment. "I'm sorry that happened to you." She looks startled by my response. "That's it? You're sorry?" "What did you expect me to say?" "I don't know." Her eyes fill with tears. "That you understand what it feels like to be betrayed? That sometimes people make terrible mistakes." I study her face, the face I once knew better than my own. "Why are you here, Elisa? Really?" "Because I've realized what I threw away." A tear spills down her cheek. "I've been thinking about us, about how solid we were before I ruined everything. We built a life together, Jackson, 7 years. 6 of which I thought were honest. I know I hurt you. I know I broke your trust." She leans forward. "But what we had was real. We could rebuild it, better this time. I've changed. I understand now what matters." There's a strange disconnect between her words and my emotional response. I should feel something stronger, anger, vindication, even desire to reconcile. Instead, I feel a quiet certainty that would have been unimaginable months ago. I've changed too, I tell her. I'm not the same person who would have done anything to keep you happy, even at my own expense. That's good, she says eagerly. We can start fresh, as equals this time. I've been in therapy too. I understand my patterns now, why I sought validation outside our marriage. I look around my office, at the photos of the community projects, at the designs that represent my authentic vision, at the space I've claimed as truly mine. I don't doubt your sincerity, I say carefully. But what you're asking for is impossible. Because you can't forgive me. Because I'm not in love with you anymore. The truth of it settles into me as I speak the words. I grieved what we had. I examined my role in our breakdown, and then moved forward. With someone else? Her gaze hardened slightly. I heard you've been spending time with Maya Chen. With myself primarily. Maya and I are friends, but that's not the point. The point is that I like who I'm becoming. Going backward would undo all the work I've done. So that's it. 7 years just discarded. Not discarded. Completed. I stand, signaling the end of our conversation. I wish you healing, Alyssa. I hope you find what you're looking for. But it's not with me. Not anymore. She rises slowly, tears now flowing freely. You don't mean that. You're just hurt, just angry. I'm neither. That's what you're not hearing. I move toward the door, holding it open. There was a time when I would have taken you back without question, grateful just to have you in my life again. That man doesn't exist anymore, and honestly, I don't think you'd be happy with who's replaced him. Jackson, please. She reaches for my hand. Just think about it. We could try just dinner. See how it feels. For a brief, disorienting moment, I feel the pull of familiarity, the comfort of returning to a known quantity, even a flawed one. The temptation to slip back into old patterns whispers through me. It would be easier in some ways, resuming a life I already know how to navigate. But as I look at her, I recognize that the pull isn't love or even desire. It's habit. It's the architect in me wanting to salvage a structure instead of designing something new from the ground up. I can't give you what you're looking for, I say with finality, and more importantly, I don't want to. I'm sorry if that sounds harsh, but it's the truth. Elisa stares at me, perhaps truly seeing the changes in me for the first time. She nods slowly, gathering her composure. I never thought you'd be the one to walk away, she says quietly. I'm not walking away. I'm standing exactly where I need to be. As I watch her leave, I feel not the satisfaction of revenge, but the quieter peace of knowing I've chosen my own well-being over familiar patterns. The blueprint of my life is being redrawn according to my own design, and while the structure isn't complete, its foundation is finally solid. I wake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling of my apartment as doubt creeps in like a cold draft. Eliza's tear-streaked face haunts me. What if I'm making a catastrophic mistake? 7 years is a long investment to walk away from. People change, relationships evolve. Maybe her betrayal was an anomaly in an otherwise salvageable marriage. Dr. Winslow's voice echoes in my mind. Doubt is normal when making significant life changes. The question isn't whether the decision feels comfortable, but whether it aligns with who you're becoming. Who am I becoming? Someone stronger, certainly. Someone with boundaries and self-respect, but also someone alone. I reach for my phone, tempted to text Eliza that we should talk again, that perhaps I was too hasty. My finger hovers over the screen before I set it aside, unresolved. The next morning, I arrive at work to find a meeting request from Daniel Mills, scheduled for 9 a.m. in the conference room rather than his office. The formality of the location suggests this isn't a casual check-in. When I enter, he's already seated at the head of the table, my Lincoln Heights proposal spread before him. "Close the door, please," he says without looking up. I comply, taking a seat across from him rather than at the subordinate position at his right. "I've reviewed your presentation materials for the client meeting tomorrow," he begins, his tone measured. "I've made some adjustments to bring them in line with the firm's approach." He slides a revised portfolio toward me. Flipping through it, I discover he's completely overhauled my design, replacing innovative elements with conventional solutions and relegating my original concept to a minor alternative option presented on a single slide. "This isn't what we discussed," I say, keeping my voice level despite the anger building inside me. "The agreement was that both approaches would be presented equally." "The agreement was that you'd present options to the client," Daniel corrects. "As design director, it's my responsibility to ensure those options reflect our firm's standards. These changes undermine the entire concept. These changes protect our client relationship and our reputation." He leans forward, Look, Jackson, I understand you've been going through personal challenges. You got talent, no question. But lately, you've been pushing boundaries that don't need pushing. Innovation requires pushing boundaries. Innovation serves clients, not personal agendas. As expression hardens, I need to know if you're a team player. Either present the materials as revised, or I'll conduct the meeting myself. The ultimatum hangs between us. 6 months ago, I would have acquiesced, swallowed my objections for the sake of workplace harmony. Now the thought feels like betrayal of a different sort. I believe in the original design, I say firmly. If that means I'm not a team player by your definition, so be it. Daniel's jaw tightens. This attitude could significantly impact your future here, Jackson. I hope you understand that. I understand exactly what's at stake. I leave the conference room with a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. I've just potentially sacrificed my career for a design principle. As I walk back to my office, I pass Maya in the hallway. Her smile fades when she sees my expression. "Everything okay?" she asks. I hesitate, unsure how much to share. Professional disagreement with Daniel, nothing important. The lie sits awkwardly between us. Maya studies my face, clearly sensing more. "Does this have anything to do with Elisa's visit yesterday? People noticed her leaving your office." "That's unrelated," I say, perhaps too quickly. "Is it?" Maya's tone is carefully neutral. "It's none of my business, of course." "It's not what you think." She wanted reconciliation. I declined. But nothing. That chapter is closed. Maya nods slowly. "If you say so. I should get back to work. The Vancouver project needs structural revisions." She walks away before I can respond, her usual warmth noticeably absent. I've handled this poorly, pushing away perhaps the one person who truly sees and accepts the person I'm becoming. That evening, I sit in my apartment surrounded by my professional portfolio, resume, and industry contacts. If tomorrow goes as I expect, I may need to seek employment elsewhere. The prospect of starting over completely, new job, new colleagues, new routines, feels overwhelming. I've rebuilt my internal architecture, but am I ready to reconstruct my entire external life as well? My phone buzzes with a text from Elisa. "I miss you. Can we please talk again?" I don't respond, but the message lingers in my mind as I prepare for the client meeting tomorrow. Sleep eludes me entirely. The presentation room is already half filled when I arrive the next morning. The Lincoln Heights clients, a developer and his executive team, chat with Daniel and two senior partners near the refreshment table. I set up my materials, having decided to present my original design regardless of consequences. If this is my last act at the firm, it will at least be authentic. I'm arranging my digital presentation when a commotion at the door draws everyone's attention. Elise enters, carrying an elaborate floral arrangement and looking nervous but determined. The room falls silent as all eyes turn toward this unexpected interruption. "I'm so sorry," she says, her voice slightly too loud in the sudden quiet. "I know this is completely inappropriate, but I needed to see you, Jackson." I freeze, acutely aware of the clients and colleagues watching this scene unfold. Daniel steps forward with a tight smile. "Perhaps this could wait until after our meeting," he suggests firmly. Elisa ignores him, moving toward me with purpose. "I couldn't stop thinking about what you said yesterday, about being a different person now." She sets the flowers on the conference table. "You're right. You have changed, and that's why we should try again. The man you become is exactly who I always hoped you'd be." The irony of her statement hits me with unexpected force. I'm finally the person she claimed to want, confident, assertive, with clear boundaries, because she left. Her betrayal catalyzed a transformation that never would have occurred within our marriage. I'm keenly aware of our audience, of the professional damage this scene is causing. But something shifts inside me, a final piece clicking into place. This public spectacle is the perfect metaphor for our relationship. My professional identity compromised to accommodate Elisa's emotional needs. "This isn't the place," I say quietly. "I know," she acknowledges, "but I needed you to understand how serious I am. I'm fighting for us, Jackson, the way you never did." The accusation strikes a nerve. Never did? I gave everything to our marriage. I built my entire life around making you happy. But you were never really present. You were always working, always accommodating without actually engaging. A senior partner clears his throat uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should reschedule." "No," I interrupt, surprising myself and everyone else. "I need to address this once. Then we can proceed with the meeting as planned." I turn to face Elisa fully, no longer concerned with the witnesses to this moment. You're right about one thing. I wasn't fully present in our marriage. I thought love meant self-sacrifice, giving you whatever you wanted without expressing my own needs. That was my mistake, and I own it. Eliza's expression brightens hopefully. So you understand. What I understand is that betrayal doesn't just break trust, it breaks identity. When you chose Victor, you didn't just reject me as a husband. You rejected who I was as a person. And rebuilding from that kind of destruction means creating something entirely new. I gesture around the room. Look at what you've done here today. Once again, my professional standing is collateral damage to your emotional impulses. This pattern between us, it's not healthy. It never was. I made a mistake, Eliza says, tears forming. One terrible mistake. The affair was a symptom, not the disease. Our foundation was flawed from the beginning. I needed external validation so badly that I confused self-erasure with love. You needed constant attention and affirmation that I couldn't provide while maintaining that facade of perfection. The clients and my colleagues have become strangely irrelevant, as if Eliza and I are alone in the room. This is our reckoning, long overdue. What if we built something new together? She pleads. With everything we've learned? I shake my head slowly. Some breaks can't be repaired, Eliza. Sometimes the kindest thing is to acknowledge that what's broken should remain broken. You don't mean that, she whispers. I do. And if you're honest with yourself, you know it too. I step back, creating physical distance that mirrors the emotional reality. What you want isn't me. It's the idea of me, the version that existed to fulfill your needs without having any of his own. For a moment, Eliza seems ready to protest further. Then something in her expression shifts, a reluctant recognition dawning. I really did love you, she says softly. I know, in your way, and I love you in mine. But love isn't enough when it's built on dependency rather than partnership. I reach past her to gather my presentation materials, suddenly clear about what needs to happen next. I hope you find what you're looking for, Eliza. But it's not here. It never was. She nods slowly, dignity replacing desperation as she collects herself. Without another word, she turns and walks out of the conference room, leaving the flowers and the last remnants of our shared past behind. In the awkward silence that follows, I face the room of stunned colleagues and clients. Daniel looks apoplectic, clearly calculating the professional damage this scene has caused. But to my surprise, the lead client, Mr. Harrington, regards me with what appears to be newfound respect. That, he says deliberately, took courage. He checks his watch. Now I believe we have a design to discuss. The original concept, I assume, not the watered-down version I received via email last night. Daniel's expression cycles through shock, anger, and forced composure in rapid succession. The senior partners exchange glances, recalibrating the power dynamics in real time. Yes, I confirm, meeting Mr. Harrington's gaze directly. The original concept, because I believe it's what this project truly needs. As I begin the presentation, I feel strangely lightened, as if I've set down a burden I've carried so long I've forgotten its weight. Whatever comes next, whether I remain at this firm or build something entirely new elsewhere, I will face it as the person I've become, not the man I once pretended to be. I placed my letter of resignation on Daniel's desk 1 week after the Lincoln Heights presentation. Despite the client's enthusiasm for my original design, or perhaps because of it, the atmosphere at the firm has become untenable. Daniel's resentment manifests in excessive criticism and impossible deadlines, while the senior partners remain conspicuously silent about the situation. You realize you're walking away from a secure position, Daniel says, barely glancing at the letter. The job market is competitive. I'm aware, I reply calmly, but I've accepted another opportunity. This captures his attention. With whom? Urban Revival Coalition. They've asked me to lead their neighborhood transformation initiative in Riverside. Daniel's expression shifts from dismissive to calculating. The nonprofit organization has been gaining significant media attention for their innovative approach to urban renewal. That's primarily public housing and community spaces, he says. Limited budget, difficult constraints. You're overqualified. Actually, I'm perfectly qualified. It's precisely the work I want to be doing. As I leave his office for the last time, I feel not regret but relief. The Riverside Project offers everything my soul has been craving: purpose, creative freedom, and the chance to directly impact people's lives through thoughtful design. Before my final day, I find Maya working alone in the materials library. We haven't spoken much since Eliza's dramatic appearance, our easy rapport replaced by professional politeness that feels worse than outright conflict. Got a minute? I ask, hovering in the doorway. She looks up from her samples, expression carefully neutral. Sure. I close the door and take a seat across from her. I owe you an apology. I wasn't honest with you about what was happening with Elisa, or with Daniel. You don't owe me explanations about your personal life. Not as a colleague, no, but as someone I care about, someone whose friendship matters to me. Absolutely I do. I meet her gaze directly. I was confused and scared of what was changing in my life. That's not an excuse, just the truth. Maya studies me for a long moment. I heard you resigned. News travels fast. Yes, I'm joining Urban Revival to lead the Riverside project. A hint of a smile touches her lips. That suits you. It feels right. I agree. Like the next logical step in whatever this journey is. And Elisa. That chapter is closed. For real this time, I hesitate, then decide complete honesty is the only path forward. I'm not fully healed yet, Maya. I'm still figuring out who I am beyond the person Elisa and Victor, and even my parents shaped me to be. But I know I value you, your perspective, your directness, your company. If friendship is all you want to offer right now, I'll gratefully accept it. If you're open to exploring something more when I'm on steadier ground, I'd like that too. That's very architects of you, she says, her smile widening slightly, laying out a detailed proposal with multiple options. Occupational hazard. Well, I appreciate the transparency. She gathers her samples, preparing to leave. How about we start with dinner next week? After you've settled into your new role, we can reassess the blueprints from there. I like that. The following week, I meet Elisa at a neutral location, a quiet cafe midway between our respective neighborhoods. This conversation, postponed since her office appearance, feels necessary for us both to move forward completely. She looks more composed than the last time I saw her, a calmness in her demeanor that suggests she too has been doing important internal work. Thank you for meeting me, she says after we exchange awkward greetings. It seemed like the adult thing to do. A smile flickers across her face. The old Jackson would have agreed to meet just to make me feel better, even if he didn't want to. The old Jackson did a lot of things that weren't healthy for either of us. We talked for nearly 2 hours, covering territory that would have been impossible in the emotionally charged atmosphere of our previous encounters. I acknowledge how my emotional unavailability and workaholic tendencies contributed to our breakdown. She admits that her affair was an inexcusable betrayal, not a justified response to our problems. I think part of me was trying to destroy what we had, she confesses, because I didn't know how to ask for what I needed, and I was too afraid to leave without a backup plan. We both avoided the hard conversations, I acknowledge. As we prepare to part ways, Elisa reaches across the table to touch my hand briefly. I'm sorry for how I hurt you. Truly, but I'm not sorry. We're both finding better versions of ourselves now. Neither am I. I find a new apartment in the Riverside district where I'll be working. A converted industrial space with exposed brick walls and massive windows overlooking the river. Unlike the transitional apartment I leased after our separation, this one feels intentional. I select each piece of furniture carefully, prioritizing comfort and functionality over trendiness. The walls feature photography from the community projects I've worked on, alongside abstract paintings from local artists that speak to me on an intuitive level. 6 months pass in a blur of creative productivity. The Riverside project garners attention from sustainable architecture publications and urban planning forums. What began as a modest neighborhood revitalization has expanded into a model for community-centered design that other cities are looking to replicate. I assemble a small but dedicated team, including recent graduates eager to make a social impact through their work. My relationship with my parents evolves too. During their visit to see my new place and work, my father surveys the community garden space we designed with obvious approval. You seem at peace, he observes as we walk the project site. More than I've ever seen you. I am, I tell him, surprised by his perceptiveness. Your mother and I wanted security for you. He gestures at the half-completed structures around us. This didn't fit our definition. I know. You wanted to protect me from the struggles you faced. He nods, uncharacteristically reflective. Perhaps we protected you from the wrong things. Later that evening, my mother helps me arrange dishes for a small dinner gathering. Your father won't say it directly, she says quietly, but he's proud of you. So am I. I hug her impulsively, something I rarely did before. Thank you. That means more than you know. Maya arrives first among my guests, carrying wine and a houseplant. Our relationship has evolved gradually over these months. Weekly dinners becoming twice weekly, conversations extending late into evenings, A first kiss on a rainy night outside her apartment building. We're taking things slowly, both aware of the importance of building something with integrity from the ground up. The place looks amazing, she says, surveying the space. It feels like you. Before I can respond, my phone chimes with an email notification. The sender's name catches me by surprise. Victor Reynolds. The subject line reads simply, "Overdue apologies." Maya notices my expression. Everything okay? I show her the notification. Cosmic timing, I suppose. Are you going to read it? Later, I decide, silencing my phone. Tonight is about moving forward, not looking back. The housewarming fills my space with laughter and conversation. Colleagues from Urban Revival, friends from the community projects, even a few former coworkers who left the firm around the same time I did. The connections feel genuine, not the professional networking that characterized my social life before. To my surprise, Elise arrives toward the end of the evening with her new partner, a literature professor from the university, who looks at her with attentive affection. After a moment of initial awkwardness, we manage polite conversation about her recent art exhibition and my ongoing projects. "The space suits you," she observes, looking around the apartment. "It's entirely yours." That was the goal, I agree. As they prepare to leave, her partner steps away to retrieve their coats, giving us a brief moment alone. "Are you happy, Jackson?" she asks quietly. I consider the question, looking across the room where Maya is engaged in animated conversation with Ray from the volunteer project. "I'm authentic," I reply. "Happiness comes and goes. Authenticity remains." She smiles at the echo of my father's words about commitment, transformed into something healthier. "Well done, architect," she says softly before rejoining her partner. After the last guests depart, Maya helps me gather empty glasses and plates. "So are you in to read Victor's email?" she asks, loading the dishwasher. I retrieve my phone, scanning the message briefly. Victor expresses regret for betraying my trust, for taking credit for my ideas over the years, for treating me as a tool for his advancement, rather than a person worthy of respect. He mentions therapy, newfound self-awareness, the usual hallmarks of forced growth. Anything substantive? Maya asks when I set the phone aside. Not really. Just someone else looking for absolution that isn't mine to give. And how does that feel? I consider this as we move to the balcony, looking out over the river and the neighborhood I'm helping transform. Neutral. His actions shaped my path, but they don't define me anymore. The next morning, I sit at my drafting table working on concepts for my newest project, a cultural center that will serve as the heart of the Riverside Revival. The design incorporates elements of the neighborhood's industrial past while creating flexible spaces for its creative future. At the center stands an atrium where the damaged original structure has been deliberately preserved rather than disguised, its broken elements becoming integral to the new construction. As I refine the details, I realize this design embodies my personal journey. The breaks and fractures aren't hidden but honored, transformed from points of weakness into distinctive features of strength. The original foundation remains, supporting something entirely new that couldn't have existed without both destruction and deliberate reconstruction. This is what I've learned through all of it, that sometimes breaking apart is the necessary first step to becoming whole. That the most beautiful and functional structures aren't those that deny their damaged history, but those that incorporate it mindfully into their new form. That renewal isn't about restoring what was lost, but about creating something more authentic from the remains. I add final touches to the atrium design, ensuring that natural light will illuminate the preserved fractures, making them glow rather than shadow. This is the heart of the building, just as my own reconstructed identity is the core of who I've become, not despite the breaking, but because of it.